welcome to What the Hex, your source for Warhammer Underworlds in under 30 space zombie infections. I'm your host, Davey, and with me are my co-hosts. I have Skylar, Josh, and Brian this evening. How are you doing, gentlemen?
I am no longer garbage set ablaze.
Well,
you'll always be in my eyes.
You're at least 50% of that. I'll let you pick which.
No, that's touching.
Thank you, you two.
Yeah, what's up, guys?
For your context, we are releasing this on the day that Void Curse Thralls, Headsman Curse, and the new starter set all go on pre-order. That's a lot of new content. We are just one lonely episode. We are going to do our best to cover some of the highlights here, but you can expect in the coming episodes for some more deeper dives into some of these particular topics. Some of us are jazzed about particular things, and so it's going to be a real struggle of wills to see what our next things are covered, but more on that later. Of course, you could predict that our topic here is this deluge of new releases. And of course, we need to say that this episode is made possible by Games Workshop, giving us a review copy each of these for us to huddle around and throw opinions at each other in order to create content for you, the listeners, and also made possible by all our patrons and just you listening. Because if you weren't listening, we'd still be doing all this discussion. We just wouldn't be recording it. But
because of you listeners, I can throw my bad opinions into the internet at large.
And I have to edit his bad opinions. So we're going to abbreviate just because it's going to be a lot to cover here. We're going to abbreviate our usual sections. I just wanted to make sure to mention R77. So it's a user that we see on our Discord that kind of goes by a different handle on that versus the blog. So we'll just go with the blog handle. But R77 has a blog, and it did a cool thing where he mirrored Sleek's Bowl, did a Truth and Claw, where it took Truth Seekers with Tooth and Claw to a Nemesis tournament. Basically, one of these things where you bring the same build and kind of compare results. I really like that sort of collaborative crossover content sort of thing. I really enjoyed the read, really enjoyed the collaboration, the community building where individual creators are kind of lifting each other up like that. So hats off to those guys for making that happen. I thought it was cool. Who else has got something else to throw in?
Yeah, the Agents of Sigmar have come out with a video that I definitely recommend. The video is titled Warhammer Underworlds, but with cards instead of dice.
What?
And they've got a caption for me here, so I'm actually just going to read that out loud. Ever wondered what playing Underworlds would be like with a deck of cards instead of a handful of dice? Or maybe you're looking for a way to free yourself from the fickle dice gods like Pete. Well, here's what it might look like. And, it's an extremely interesting concept, and their delivery is a lot of fun. I recommend checking it out.
I do like those guys. They were one of the few. I don't think I'm currently contributing on Patreon because some of my available time kind of dissipated for watching content. But I think in my life, I've contributed maybe 2 patron things, and those guys are one of them. So salute to them for that. This is obviously a huge site. Have you guys played Cosmic Encounters ever? That's like deck-based combat.
Oh my gosh. It's the first board game. I'm a major board gamer for those who don't know, and that's how Brian was able to trick me into this wonderful game.
Found the chink in your armor.
Not apologizing.
But it was the first board game I tried because I'm constantly learning and introducing games to my friend group. And Katie, my wife, was new to our group. So I was kind of introducing her to the group and off the back of a new game. And that game was indeed Cosmic Encounter.
Well, all right.
And that did not go well. particularly because that game has a lot of diplomacy. A lot of table talk, and you can work through and leverage your relationships that you have with people at the table. So she felt, as a newcomer to the group, particularly targeted or excluded from deals and jokes and things like that. So I still have a copy. That's the only game of it I've ever played, and I won't get rid of it. At any time we do a purge, she's like, "What about Cosmic Encounters?" I'm like, No, I'm going to give that game a fair shake one of these days.
All right. Fair enough. Well, we are going to skip our next segment, which is What the Heck is Going On With You, because What the Heck is Going On With Us is absolutely nothing. Little peek behind the curtain here. We're recording this hot on the heels of our previous episode. We have some time constraints with as far as how the releases are landing. So we are going to talk about this right now. What we've been doing is recording content for you, dear listener. So let's jump into it. New releases, and then also a little inside baseball. Josh may need to depart this podcast, or maybe even this Mortal Coil, a little bit early. So we're gonna start on one of his pet projects here. One of the things he's very excited about. Obviously, as we said, we have the Headsman's Curse, we have Void Curse Thralls, but Josh really wants to get into that starter set, particularly because he's a good Sepulchral Guard boy. Am I right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say good so much as I play them.
Dabbler.
I mean, you have enjoyed them in the past, and so that of the releases, I think that was one of the ones that you were most engaged
absolutely with. I am very excited to share good and bad opinions of the SEPG.
So well, and then there's also the Far Striders in there, Josh.
Are they?
Yeah, we'll have a deeper dive on this starter set later. Our plan is to bring a new or returning player in and try to get a grasp on their experience with this starter set, and I think there's a lot to be gained from that. But in the short term, let's get some general impressions of this starter set. Like, what is your take on this? Like, obviously, it's a big deal, or potentially you might think it's a big deal that we have revamped warbands and some new things with this box that we haven't seen before. I'm gonna send around the horn, Josh. Since I've already brought your name up, what's your take on the general vibe of this starter set?
So the general vibe, I haven't looked too closely at the Far Striders because I feel like they don't deserve my attention.
Oh,
but
all right.
Also,
you are getting muted for the rest of the podcast.
Well, it's been nice, folks.
Me too.
Don't tempt me.
Oh no.
All right. So right off the rip, I definitely went headlong into SEPG because I've played around with them. I've enjoyed my time deck building with them and was very excited to see that they were on the docket for getting a refresh because a lot of their strength depended on a small handful of cards. Their basic ability in the Warden, and whatever prowess the championship pool had at the time. So I wanted to see what they had really done to revamp and reinvigorate this warband, maybe even resurrect this warband. The jokes only get worse from here. Yeah. All right, folks. So
you thought it wasn't possible, but they do get worse.
Help. Every day. Okay. So my general feelings on the SEPG here are that they did them a great service. Okay. So first off, let's talk about just the fighters at large.
I'm going to break you off for a second here. We're going to get into the warband as a whole. Right now, we're just doing some quick overview on the starter set as a whole. So,
killing me.
We'll come back around to your Sepulchral Guard love affair. But Brian, you have any thoughts on this as a new entry for the starter set?
Well, when it was announced, before we knew the contents of it, you, I, and Phil, or you, Phil, and I, at the Throwdown were saying, is it going to be the same with a new rulebook? Like, is it going to be Wraith Creepers and Storm of Celestis with updated rules for... because that came out in Dire Chasm. So there's a lot to update. But then that wouldn't really sell much to players that have been playing since Dire Chasm. It would just offer, entry level for those Barnes and Noble general market stores. On the spectrum of like how crazy do they get with this box, we were like, okay, they could do a new warbands entirely, 2 new warbands entirely, which is what I thought they were going to do. And I was like, and on the crazy end of the spectrum, they completely redo 2 warbands. And I thought that was something we've speculated in our debate-isode. Do they redo warbands or do they just make 2.0 warbands? And they've gone full crazy and they've redone 2 old warbands. I'm like, this is wild. Totally, having a stream of new content's always nice, but people do have a sincere love for some of these old warbands, and seeing them revitalized is incredible. I don't expect that they're going to get around, and I don't think we should hope for every Season 1, Season 2 warband to be revitalized. But I think whenever they do a new starter box, if we get 2 revitalized warbands each year, I think that'd be great, and always gives old players a fingers crossed, like, oh, they're going to do My Love Chosen X's. Like, I think it's phenomenal. I'm so excited for it.
All right. What about you, Skylar?
Well, to jump off of what Brian just said real quick, the fact that the new faction or the new versions of Sepulchre Guard and Farstriders are going to have proper Rivals decks. And so like they're fully built into the Rivals format with what they as a faction can bring to the table is really exciting. And I've heard a lot of clamor just locally with people I know that are into the older warbands that they wish that, they didn't have to sub in a 32 card deck to be Rivals legal with some of their favorites. So like Brian, I'm hoping that we get more of these. I'm hoping Balloon Boys is, down the pipeline rather quickly here if they continue to do these reworks. But
Balloon Boys,
Caradron Overlords. He doesn't know the real names.
I'm learning.
There's a Balloon Boy in that warband, Skylar.
Well, he's the leader, right? He's important.
He's not the leader.
This is coined by our
my gosh,
our friend of ours who plays Caradron Overlords, and he refers to them as Balloon Boys because of the Age of Sigmar army having units of Balloon Boys. So where there's one, there's all, I guess.
All right.
Wait a minute though. But point of embarrassment. Did you just tell me that the ballooner is not the leader?
No, he's not.
Oh my gosh.
He's absolutely not the leader.
All right. Well, walking away, this has been a nice podcast. What I'm personally the most excited for in the starter set is the play-by-play walkthrough for new players. The fact that it's its own book that you can pick up and run through with new players is so exciting to me. And to not only walk you through a game, but also walk through how a small difference in that moment could have impacted the game, I think is really exciting. I think that for many, the game can be a bit overwhelming to learn all in one leap. And this is a tool to offload a ton of that, right? It'll actually walk you through, guide you through the game. And I'm really excited for people to have this tool introducing others into the game, or even those that just discover the game by walking into a Barnes & Noble or where have you, picking up this box and bringing it home to be able to have this, electric guide to the game to see what it can be and what type of energy it brings to the table.
Yeah, I mean, I think I remember when I was just starting out with the game, like I was really engaged with any kind of battle report I could find, just trying to consume as much as I can. This is basically like a written battle report in the box for you, where you can kind of like understand how the game flows and like see how a game progresses. So I think it's a really good touch. I think this is like a very minor thing, but the front of the box says 2-player starter set. And I think it's a wise move. It tells somebody who is brand new to it that they can look at it and say like, well, that's a little pricey. Oh, but it's 2 players. I can we don't each have to get this. Like me and my buddy can split this box and we're good to go. So I think that's good.
Or the curious who's unfamiliar with Underworlds as a whole can say, "Oh, I just need one other player to test this out with." Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And then for me, I did actually put my money on a revamp, and I'm not sure what my instinct was to that extent, but I like that they're doing a revamp rather than new warbands because rather than try to include like brand new ways of engaging, I think we've all said this on this podcast where we're continually impressed with how they can like come up with a new concept for a warband. But the starter set, this is a way for them to like bring something back that people have been playing for a long time are excited about. Like I'm excited to see 2 warbands that I remember from way back when. These warbands are effectively new warbands for people who have joined the game anytime in the past, like 3 years, 4 years, something like that, because these warbands have not been available for that time. So this gets new players excited, gets old players excited, and then doesn't require them. They can say like, okay, like if we're doing this warband with what we've learned from the game, how would it look now? And so I think it's a pretty masterful move in my opinion on how to make this sort of engaging for multiple audiences. So excited for that. I have no idea if this is going to be like a thing where a new starter set every year, or longer than that. And then I think another thing is that like with no slight intended to the Wraith Creepers and the Storm of Celestis, those miniatures, while cool, are a little bit samey. They're a little hard to distinguish, and that's not the case as much for the Farstriders and Sepulchral Guard. Like
Agree wholeheartedly.
Those are great showcase miniatures to show this game off, and I think it's a really good choice. And finally,
not only are they distinct, but the Sepulchral Guard are by and far away considered to be some of the best skeleton models GW has ever made, right? And
which always has general appeal.
So for those to be in circulation again, both for people already established into Warhammer in general, and for those enthusiasts that are like, oh my gosh, those would be perfect for my D&D game, and then for them to find themselves in the rule book going, you know what, this game looks pretty cool. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and the Warden is notorious for having the sexiest cape to ever cape.
Absolutely.
Fantastic sculpt.
And then finally, I just kind of like that this starter set is a callback to the physical location of Shadespire, also the name of the original game. But like this is where the Cataphrane curse began, which has kind of carried forward through many of the seasons of the game. And a lot of the artwork associated with this, it's got some of that shattered glass, some of that shade glass artwork all throughout it. So I think it's a great touch.
Cataphrane curse? I only know the Void curse now. Thrum.
Oh my god. All right, but let's get into it. And because we have Josh, who is, I guess, Skeleton Stan, let's get into those Sepulchral Guard. Josh, we're not going to go there's so much to cover right now. We'll do deeper dives on these later, but just give me the overall view of this warband and what's changed just from the fighter cards perspective. Give me that fighter card vibe off the Sepulchral Guard.
I thought you'd never ask. So right off the rip, they did them a great service, and the first thing that I want to point out is they gave shield defensive profiles to the fighters that are holding shields.
I knew this was going to be the first thing that you mentioned.
It's about time, and I cannot wait for all of the other offenders to get the same treatment.
How do you feel about Turash, who has a shield on his back? Does he deserve a shield defense?
So
he deserves no love.
Because
all right.
Because Narvia has the shield defense once she's inspired.
Narvia has a shield defense to start, my bro.
Oh, she do.
Yeah.
I thought you played that warband.
I did.
I'm
you know
really
what we
sorry.
said about trauma earlier.
Anyway, back to the Sepulchral Guard.
So back to the SEPG. Besides the cleanliness of having, shield fighters with shield profiles, they cleaned up and buffed the warden's ability to no longer be dependent on token state. So obviously, to activate the warden, you still need to not have a charge token on him.
Yep.
But you can move other fighters that do have tokens. And what this means is a lot of flexibility, hot off of the heels of the move and the charge abilities that came around with the turn of the season
with Gnarlwood.
With Gnarlwood, and now you can use those nuisance fighters like the Prince of Dusts, the Champion, and the Harvester. You can use them offensively, and then they're not committed to that spot. You can reposition those with the Warden's ability, without, like I said, committing to that spot indefinitely, which is huge for a warband that is all about positioning.
Yeah, that's super spicy, and it's something I kind of overlooked at just how powerful that was. I mostly looked at it as I could move multiple fighters like these petitioners who all have shields who are now on one block. And if they get driven off, I can move them right back on. But I love what you're talking about there, where like a charge from one of these more offensive-oriented fighters, including the Prince of Dust, who now starts on 2 damage. They can charge, and then you can use that action efficiency to also then grab an objective that's important deeper into enemy territory.
Mm-hmm.
Or back in your own if you want to keep them safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing to keep in mind with that is, as you're kind of going through the updated gambits and upgrades and such, some of them do give your fighters charge tokens, but I think that's just to keep them from popping up and bonking enemies, which is kind of feel bad because it's like, oh, hey, the skeleton was inside us all along. Keeps from having those moments.
Yeah.
But you can still move them and have them be effective after that.
Yeah.
So I think all in all, they got a great service to the fighters and what they can do as a whole.
Yeah. Well, all right. I think we're going to go into our traditional style, which is to we're going to give everybody a chance to call out from each category their favorite objective, favorite gambit, favorite upgrade. And Josh, since we're already on you, why don't you throw your favorite objective at us?
Okay, so my favorite objective is, I'm going to actually kind of buck the script here. My favorite objective is claim the city. And
no.
In here, they took out claim the city. It wasn't an auto-include, but it was my personal favorite. And I'm a little disappointed. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that in certain formats you can take old cards or not. I'm going to lean towards not, just because I'm a pessimist. But that's my favorite objective.
All right. Your favorite objective is one that doesn't exist anywhere. But for one shining moment in the Ulgu seasons, it was amazing.
I respect the decision to go no further. When we were first looking into these decks, that was the first thing I dove into the Sepulchral Guard objectives to look at, and posted it over to Josh, and he was like, "No, like I don't have a moment right now to confirm that, but like, you must be wrong.
Josh, jokes aside, what is your new favorite?
So my new favorite, I don't know if it's going to be an auto include, but it's very tempting to me. So the card Retake What Is Ours. It's a duel. So score this in an end phase if your warband holds 3 or more objectives and 1 or more of those objectives is in enemy or no one's territory.
Yeah.
This is shiny Josh bait to take the Sepulchral Guard with Fearsome Fortress and just have a marching wall of hello skeletons.
Yes.
That if somebody were to have known me while reinvigorating this warband, this was the in the artwork. I'm sure if you look very closely, it's to Josh from GW with love. Because that is absolutely the flavor that I want to take with CPG is the marching wall of skellies trying to create that fearsome fortress.
I mean, this lets you double down on supremacy with something that is just marginally more difficult than supremacy.
For 3.
Well, supremacy is 3 too.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Brian.
What?
Brian, remember, read the card.
Yeah. Well,
No.
But here's it.
No. Never.
Your lack of hold experience is showing.
But so like this is helpful in like we talk about it being a slightly worse supremacy, but in Nemesis or Rivals, like it is available there where supremacy is not. And I think this is so close that it's totally worth doubling down on. So yeah, big time. Skylar, you got one for us?
I do. So coming off the absence of Claim the City, my favorite card is Lay Claim to It All.
It's because of the art, isn't it?
It's so dope.
It's so dope.
Yeah.
All is for the dead. All is for Nagash.
Well, now I can't use that for the flavor text quiz.
Nagash? Did I? Well, whatever.
Potato.
He's not around
Nagash.
to scold me. But this is the Hold More objective that made it into their deck. And for me, it's their little nod to the absence of Claim the City. And
dominant position?
Yeah, absolutely. It's dominant position folded into this deck. I love that card. I love it here. And the fact that they have the Warden able to move, 2 at a time to get you into position for this. It feels like it should be here. It feels like it's going to be strong here, and I'm happy to see it.
Nice. Brian, hit me.
So first off, I just want to point out this Lay Claim to It All would be an awesome diorama entry.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Stop spending my free time.
You can have that one. You can, by all means, I want you to do that.
Stop it.
So my favorite card, and this is largely inspired by art, but a challenge unanswered, Alex. Score this in an end phase if there are more enemy fighters out of action than there are friendly fighters out of action for 2 glory. And the art has one of Kagra's Ravagers getting beheaded.
Yep. With a spear, no less. For me, it is, and this is a pure power pick. I think Undying Watchman scores immediately after an opponent's activation step if your warband holds 2 or more objectives and 1 or more of those objectives is in enemy territory. So there used to be a surge for it had a different scoring window, like you do it after an activation, not after enemy power step. I like that this gives the right to respond, but it's such a huge payoff that if there is ever the situation where the Sepulchral Guard are holding 1 objective in your territory and 1 in their own, you have to respect this. Like, this is too big of an objective to score. Like, they get 2 glory and they'll get to cycle. Oof. And I think that's a really cool high reward for actually like positioning in a way that allows engagement. I think it's going to be one of their very strongest but not busted objectives.
Yeah, universally, this card was only worth 1 glory.
Yep.
Yeah, wow.
Yep. It was worth 1 glory, but it was the opponent rarely had the right to respond in the way that this one does allow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although with pushes, you can set this up where it's pretty difficult to react to. And we may talk about pushes in just a second here.
The Grimwatch were featured on that card. What was that card? Right?
I was trying to remember it while I was talking because I knew that question would come up.
It was a staple for the time.
Yeah.
That's your flavor text.
Yeah. Oh my God. Anyway.
All right.
In the meantime, let's talk some gambits. We'll bring it right back around to Josh. What gambit are you excited about?
Ooh. So there's a lot going on with the gambits, and I don't know if I'm particularly excited about one, but they've done right and kept them going in a consistent direction. A lot of the older warbands, they did a decent job of like teeing you up for championship in a way that was, okay, we're going to give you a lot of different options. Are they cohesive? Do they work together? No, but they're all good in their own right kind of way. This seems to be consistent. So it's a lot of move tech. It's a lot of revive tech, and it's a lot of giving your opponent bad choices. So I think the highlights of that, I'm going to pick 2.
Okay.
One is Terrifying Screams, because I'm really glad that they reined it back from being a cross-board push to being a range 2. And Pitiless Commands, which is choose a friendly fighter with 1 or more raise counters, push the fighter up to 2 hexes.
Yeah.
A push 2 is strong, but putting it behind that curtain of, well, one of your fighters has to die first is just enough tempering for, I think, both of those to be very valuable picks without being oppressive.
It really makes it interesting, right?
Yeah.
I like that.
Skylar, hit me with one.
All right. Well, I mean, Josh Winnick went ahead and picked 2, so I won't do that. But he definitely limited my choices here. Let's
by 20%.
Let's go with Bone Shrapnel. So I like that this is a reaction to going out of action, and thematically, I just really enjoy the idea of taking down, one of these mobile, brought to life skeletons. Right? It's like your punishment for taking one of them down is that they're going to explode in your face and deal 1 damage.
Yeah. Brian, around to you.
So out of sequence attack actions is powerful, right? So I'm going to go with ceaseless attacks. Ploy reaction, play this after an activation step in which a friendly fighter made 1 or more attack actions. Choose another friendly fighter. The chosen fighter makes 1 attack action.
Yeah.
Seems good.
Seems good.
Real good.
Yeah. That was a staple previously, and I think it continues to be. Like, it's you can really set up some sweet combos with that.
Any corrections, Josh?
You said it was good. Enough said.
We can't hear him. He's muted. It's fine.
All by myself.
For me, I'm actually going with Restless Dead, which I know, Josh, has been nerfed. But this is choose a friendly fighter other than the Sepulchral Warden that is out of action. Place the chosen fighter on an empty starting hex in your territory, then give that fighter 1 raise counter and 1 charge token, with that last 4 words being the important ones as far as changes. what I think it does is like not on its own, but in combination with other things, almost changes the tenor of this warband in general. Because this used to be one of the powerful things that you could figure out with a Sepulchral Guard, because they didn't have a lot else going for them at times. Like there were times where they shone for different reasons, but you would be able to do this and then charge with like a souped up fighter. That's no longer available to you because you're very unlikely to have charge tokens on every single fighter in the warband because they're so numerous. I really feel like this kind of exemplifies the way they're trying to lead with this warband, which is they're going to hold objectives and score off that. And if you want to kill them, then you're going to unlock the other part of their scoring, which is to do things because they have raised fighters, whether that be gambits, which trigger off of raised fighters, or objectives that score because you have raised X number of fighters, or a raised fighter has done a particular thing. And so I think like even something as small as that is GW signaling like this is how we'd kind of like this warband to play, which I like quite a lot. That brings us around to upgrades. Josh, hit me with an upgrade.
Let me see here.
Please don't take mine this time.
Which one's yours?
Skylar, hit me with an upgrade.
A familiar face. I like this card for two reasons. One, the pettiness is just brilliant.
Yeah.
This card is the bounty for this fighter is spent glory. So that means you're going through the effort of including this in your deck, equipping it to the petitioner because it's restricted to the petitioner, and spending a glory to get it on him, just so that if they ever kill the petitioner, it's going to be spent glory. That's just, all right, just chef's kiss. I love that.
It's not good, but it's petty.
And
yeah,
then,
you actually stole my card, so I wanted to comment. I love the idea of charging a petitioner in and then having a Glorian upgrading that petitioner, so it's like, yeah, go ahead and kill him. Like if they haven't got their seed glory yet, that's really savage.
Well, and the fact that it's restricted to the petitioner, if the petitioner goes down, you can salvage this, which is like an extra spice to the pettiness of it.
Yeah, if all three of your petitioners are out, you could start cycling this. That's a good call. Yep. I like that it's repeatable, so you could just keep raising that same petitioner, and they can get stuff, but they won't get any unspent. That's kind of cool, and that almost like encapsulates a broader theme of this, where they really tried to find ways to make the petitioners a more relevant part of this warband in general. But Josh, we'll go back to you. What you got?
Speaking of relevant petitioners and bad segues, my upgrade pick is Legacy of Dust.
Ooh, yeah.
So this is a spicy one, folks. +1 damage to range 1 attack actions made by friendly petitioners within 2 hexes of this fighter. If this fighter is within 2 hexes of a friendly petitioner, this fighter is supporting that petitioner. And you can put this on the Warden or the Prince of Dust. Holy smokes. +1 damage, aura, and support to petitioners. That puts petitioners on effectively hammer profiles with 2 damage swings. What universe are we living in? This is wild. Well,
and it's not just that. Like, it doesn't say anything about attack actions on their cards. So if you bring some weapons, all of a sudden they are hitting really, really hard.
Oh, it's so spicy.
Yeah, I like that it goes on 2 different people. Like that thematic thing of it going on the Prince of Dust. I know Eric's going to like that when he eventually gets a chance to take a look at these. So yeah, good pick. Brian, I know that your pick got snagged from under you, but hit me with what you would pick as your second best.
So I remember this being strong, and I don't know if it's changed at all, but I'm going to call back Ancient Commander. It's upgrade action restricted to the leader. Choose up to 3 friendly fighters, and the chosen fighters each make 1 move action. So upgrading the innate action on the Warden's card from moving 2 fighters up to 3. Seem to remember this working the same way in the last deck and being a pretty good staple. Has it changed?
It has not changed. The only thing that changed was the Warden's ability itself, not depending on fighters without tokens.
Right. And this does the same.
Yep.
What also changed, though, is all the card art. It's dope. So great.
Oh my god, yes. I forgot to mention it on the fighters themselves.
Yeah.
They all have inspired alt variants, or inspired art variants.
Yeah.
So they're in different poses. The
swords the weapons are purple.
Yeah, the weapons are glowy, like their eyes are lit up. Like it's not anything super groundbreaking, but it really drives home that message of, hey, you killed me. I'm a bit spicy about it.
And what a cool detail to add into a starter set box too. Right? Because normally you have to hunt for that alt art, right? You have to have a local scene that's handing that out through an organized play kit, or hunting eBay, or to see if you can't find copies of your favorite warband and alt art. But for it to be right in the starter set, as soon as you flip that card over, I think that's an awesome touch.
Yeah, I mean, it just drives home the idea of inspired, like you're powered up. Cool, rad, love it.
Absolutely.
Mine is no vitals, and this is a upgrade that says -1 damage from attack actions that target this fighter to a minimum of 1 other than attack actions with cleave and or knockback. And I just like it for like the thematic and narrative aspect of it. Like it's hard to kill somebody who doesn't have any vital organs. And then I like the idea that knockback or cleave is like, well, you're just going to break the bones, to do it. So I thought it was cool design. I think it's a powerful card. I think you'll see a lot of it. It's really strong. And I like seeing cleave and knockback, like those kind of rules that are a little bit more on the fringe get a reason to, like if for some reason you expected Sepulchral Guard to be around, like, well, then cleave and knockback are a little bit more important. So good call there. That kind of covers us for Sepulchral Guard. Anyone got any more thoughts I want to share before we move on?
Yeah, I've got a question. So Davey, you've been here since the beginning, through the ups and downs of Sepulchral Warden. How do you think they were before this, and how do you think they compare now afterwards? Like, if we don't do like a tier list, but would you say that they might have been like low C, upper D tier, or where do you think they were compared to now?
I think that's pretty accurate. There are players out there that are like masters of this kind of play. I'm not one of them, that can sometimes find ways to do that. Like Shuby on the Discords has at times in the past been really good with them, been able to make them sing even when it seemed like they couldn't. But I think this gives them my take is that they have like a lot of cool tools that make them interesting even without the introduction of championship like play pool. So I'm really excited to see, kind of like I was talking about, that idea of like, you can force your opponent to pick their poison. Like, you can either let me hold these objectives or you can kill my guys. Either way, you're going to set up something that I want to do. So I like it. I'm excited to see them in the wild.
Shout out to Jimmy Malini for rocking Sepulchral Guard throughout Nether Maze at the very least, but I think Harrow Deep as well, during that time when objective starts upside down, and it brings into the game some spicy implications for hold plans.
Yeah, totally. Unless there's any objections, we're going to advance to the Farstriders.
One more note on both Sepulchral Guard and Farstriders. Shout out to Wonderworlds and Underworlds DB. I don't know what your game plan is for reworked warbands, but
good point.
I look forward to seeing what you decide on.
Before we jump into the Forest Riders, we're going to bid adieu to Josh, who's got the one thing you want out of this episode, which is talk about Sepulchral Guard, and then he's gone like Kaiser Sose. So,
all right. Night, guys.
Night.
All right. Forest Riders. These are kind of my babies. I played them a lot in season 1. And at the time it was a thing where like they came out and everyone was like, big question mark over your head. Like, I don't think these guys, I don't know. And so in the same way that like Phil has been talking about the Storm Coven, were like an interesting puzzle to figure out. That's what drew me to them. The really the most significant thing with their fighter cards, there's a few things with their attack actions. Like they have this ability to like crit. It's crit stagger on some of the ranged attack actions is kind of like the big thing that wasn't there before. But the big thing is the Inspire has changed. It used to be they had to end a round in enemy territory. Here now it is that they have to make 2 or more attack actions with different names, basically like 2 different attack actions. So like
2 different weapon profiles.
Yeah, exactly. You could use your and they all have 2 on their card, but if you happen to upgrade them or give them an illusion or something like that, you have another way around that. So what I like is it doesn't dictate a positioning choice, because it's just so punishing if you were trying to inspire and had to like run into enemy territory when you're fighting somebody who is like, yes, please run at me. That's amazing. This gives you a little bit more flexibility. And so I don't know if it's an upgrade or a downgrade, but it is a more flexible option, in my opinion. So I was excited about that. And I'm looking forward to seeing him in practice. As far as I'll start this off since I'm already doing it. The objectives, I would say, of the card overhauls, I think their objectives were the weakest aspect of their new deck. There's a lot of stuff here that's kind of tough to pull off, or not. Like the game plan, it kind of pushes you into some tough choices or needs you to succeed on more dice rolls than you want to do. So, but I will go with Veteran Marksman. This is score this immediately after a friendly fighter's range 3+ attack action that resulted in a critical hit. It is quite possible you will make 4 3-dice attack actions in any given turn, maybe more with Gambit support. And that is 12 dice that one of them needs to roll a crit, and you'll score this. So I guess that's not technically true because it needs to be a critical hit. So if you roll just 1 crit and your enemy rolled like a crit def, then this won't land. But I think this is a way to score something for just doing what you're trying to do, and that's always a good kind of surge to have. So we'll go with Brian. Brian, you got an objective you want to call out?
I did, but you took it. So
Yeah.
I'll just go one step further with the Judgment of Sigmar.
Mm-hmm.
Surge, score this immediately after a friendly fighter's range 3+ attack action takes the target out of action. So still doing what they want to do using those ranged attacks. This one's just for a kill. So dice dependent, arguably. I don't know if that's more or less dice dependent than hoping for a critical. You just gotta hope you got a target available.
Yeah, I think with Forest Rider getting inspired, this is almost like if this isn't happening, then you're in trouble. So
yeah. And with stuff like Glory Seeker, for us, they're already Grievous. Oh, could you just start stacking a bunch of Grievous sources?
Could.
Mm-hmm.
That used to be the way with Forest Rider. Get
right, because Grievous used to
got,
stack, and then they stopped stacking,
and then started stacking. Yeah,
right.
Because you used to get him inspired, and then get Glory Seeker and Fighter's Ferocity on him, and then if you roll a crit, he's doing 4 damage with his bird.
Gotcha.
Yep, real cool.
Well, with Stagger and stuff like that, even with Barge and Stun, like accuracy bonuses to them. That's great.
Big time.
Fish for that crit.
Yeah. Skylar, we've taken both the range attack surges Anything left for you?
You know, funny enough, I was like, okay, he took veteran marksman. Okay, I'll queue up with Judgment at Sigmar, and I'm like, okay. So what I will jump in with is a reliable end phase.
Okay.
So if you're going to rock one glory end phase cards, you want to make sure that they're nice and reliable, so that you can score them out regardless when you get them, and especially if you get them in round one. Here I'll call out Flash of Light. Score this in end phase if one or more friendly fighters are each in an edge hex in enemy territory. So knowing that's in your deck, you can easily game plan to have somebody cross no man's land and just sit on the closest to your territory edge hex just across that line, to score a nice, cool one glory with Flash of Light. Or you might get lucky and you might have Aetheric Paths in your hand as well, to help make setup more interesting for yourself. And you can, place the fighter that you plan to score this with in the back on an edge hex out of reach, and play Aetheric Paths later to get them into that position for you. Actually, you know what? Choose a friendly fighter in an edge hex, and more than one hex from each enemy fighter. It's not actually looking if you've got a move or charge token on you already. So,
right.
You can even make, if you draw both, Etheric Pass part of your aggressive game plan here.
Yeah. Skylar, I want to make that your Gambit choice.
I'm down with it. That would be my Gambit choice.
It's super cool. I think there's a ton of stuff you can do with this. I think hidden paths, when it existed, was a big deal for them. And I think now they have a somewhat version of that in-house. I think that's pretty incredible. That penalty, the charge token, used to be really bad. Now, if everyone's charged out, not as big a deal. And
especially when...
With a 3-band too, right? Yeah. You can be charged out with your other two fighters, play Etheric Paths going into your turn on your third fighter, and you're like, charged out? Charge tokens? What do you mean I'm charged out? We're good here, right? Yeah. Like, all of a sudden, you've not only appeared behind them, but you're ready to play.
Yeah, auto include. Brian, I'm assuming that was going to be your choice. So what else would you pick?
That was definitely a pick for card art, but for my Gambit, it will be Raptor Strike. Little bias for Dread Pageant, even if Hadzu's getting got, that's his job. So Gambit, choose one enemy fighter within 4 hexes of a friendly leader, deal 1 damage to the chosen fighter. So now that we have salvage, this has very little risk, I think.
Interestingly, this can't be salvaged. It is not actually restricted to a leader.
Oh, it requires a restricted box, eh?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. And Raptor Strike is a reprint. It's an oldie and a goodie.
Yeah.
So still popular. I take it you don't always have to risk your leader that much with this warband, or you don't have to unless your opponent's really gunning for him?
I think the leader is in the past keeping like the warband really went a ton through Farstrider. It could do okay through others, but it was at its best if you got Farstrider inspired and was able to do a bunch of work with Farstrider. So I think you're safe to take this card. I think it's a really good pick because if you're losing Farstrider, you're making mistakes. That bird is big also.
As a big boy.
Yep. For me, I'm going with Ranger's Advance, and that's because this is a card that was pretty good, but got really good. It used to be choose 2 fighters and push them each 1 hex, something along those lines, like you'd have to have 2 fighters alive. It is now choose up to 2 friendly fighters and push each chosen fighter 1 hex. So this is sidestep, but better. Sidestep's already really good. This is like a double sidestep. But if you are somehow down to 1, which often actually happens with this sort of 3-fighter warband, then it's not dead in your hand, which makes it incredible. So big choice to me. It's not even their only one that is a sidestep, but better. They have another one in the deck, and that's great. Brian, we're going to go around to you on upgrades. You got an upgrade you like?
Yes, sir. I'm going to take the one that Skylar would probably have picked. Incredible stamina upgrade reaction. Before this fighter's activation, remove one move or stagger token from this fighter. You can only use this ability once per round. Seems pretty useful, at least for getting rid of stagger tokens. This, I think, could also make delving a bit more reliable. So say you have sudden revelation and you flip it, you cause a stagger token before, and you score sudden revelation. You can then take this activation to get rid of that stagger token, flick it back to a objective if you need that. So couple ideas come to mind, as well as I think there's a toxic terror, nasty poison that gives you a move token, reducing the amount of charges you can do, or if you need to have all your fighters charged out, it could be a good way around that. Seems flexible. I think it's all right.
I think that's cool, especially in a 3-fighter warband where you may be trying to like pilot a lot of stuff through the one fighter.
You could even use this to flee. Like say, one of your fighters are endangered, throw this on them and run away, and then they can make another either run even further back or charge back into the fray.
Yeah, I mean, you could always stack moves anyway, but like the ability to move and then use this to charge after that, really extends your threat range. Yeah, good call. I am going to take Watchful Advance as another upgrade that grants a reaction. This is after this fighter's activation, in which this fighter made one or more move actions, give this fighter 1 guard token. This is a warband that can get on 2 defense dice based on their
really
Inspire.
good.
This card's
actually really good.
This card's excellent.
Yeah, and then this is also because of one of their objectives, and because of the gambit that Skylar already mentioned, the Etheric Pass. They kind of end up in edge hexes. Being on guard in an edge hex is particularly important because it's the place you're most likely to get trapped, either just because somebody has a range 2 or 3 and they can engineer that, or they move a fighter in and have a range 1 situation. The ability to make sure that ties are not losses for you is a big deal. So if you're going to be hanging out on the edge of the battlefield, guard is good. And if you are trying to inspire by charging in and making a range 1 attack action, you may be forced next to a lethal or something like that. So yeah, great one. I like this a lot. Skylar.
Yeah.
Give me one.
I'm going to actually be able to piggyback off of yours with Lone Warrior.
Yeah.
So rolls of a single support are successes in this fighter's defense rolls. I like this for a few reasons. One, I really like that it synergizes with Watchful Advance. You can run both in the same fighter. And particularly, I like the synergy with Guard. Even if you're not running Watchful Advance, you can put this fighter on Guard, right? And this card isn't going to take away from the benefit of On Guard. Make it redundant. Make it feel like, no, I've already got an upgrade doing that. I feel like a lot of defensive bonuses will kind of push you towards like you're already on shields and you're going to get that extra dodge result. So to let Guard tackle that dodge result or that shield result for you and benefit you, that single support. I think that's really great in this warband.
Yeah. All right. So leaving this starter set, and again, we will return to that with a playthrough. We're going to try and get, like I said, a new or returning player in where we'll get you either their take or maybe even a battle report. We'll see how it all plays out with the new set. But we are going to hit up the new warband, Headsman's Curse. We've seen this warband. We've seen the preview for it. We know some things to expect. But not everything. And Brian's going to break down the overall, give us a broad take of this warband and anything we ought to know from these fighter cards.
All right. So this is, I think this is Death's version of an assassin warband, and particularly in the GW Grand Alliance of Death's style, which is that kind of Nagash tollkeeper Hades, like tracking his souls and what he's due. So they're the Headsman's Curse. The flavor text, if I should read the card.
Sure.
The headsman's curse has come. Nothing shall stay the bite of the dread blade terminus, for it was fashioned long ago by Nagash himself, and has a vile sentence of its own. Damned souls surround it, bound to serve as judge, jury, and executioner. Their former identities are subsumed into the great sword's necromantic magic. Always there is one to wield the blade, one to sharpen its edge, one to bear the headman's block, and a scriptor to sentence the condemned. No matter the crime against the supreme necromancer, the sentence is always the same: death.
So
sounds cool.
when I saw another ghosty death warband was coming out, I was just like, I mean, okay. And then I read their lore, as Brian just read to you, and it hooked me instantly. I love the idea that there's always one in each of these roles around this sword, as if, you know, you were to extinguish one, then another soul would replace it to fill that role.
Yeah, they did a great job with the background on this one. I agree.
So, like a broad overview, like I said, I think this is Death's version of an assassin warband. There are no assassin keyword fighters in here, but I still think thematically, I would dare to say that I think, aside from, Ephelim's Pandemonium, this is my favorite concept to mechanic warband. So
very cool.
So for this warband, they come with their own plot card. The Headsman's Curse. So when using the Headsman's Curse, show this card to your opponent in the reveal your warband step and use these rules in the game. Awaiting execution. If a fighter with a condemned counter would be given a condemned counter, it is that additional condemned counter is removed. So each fighter that is condemned can only have one condemned counter. Justice is served. When an enemy fighter with a condemned counter is taken out of action, gain one condemned counter. So it's kind of like Bone Tithe, but you have to put the condemned token on them first. Thinking Canaan's Reapers, Bone Tithe. Well executed. After a friendly fighter's attack action takes an adjacent target out of action, gain one condemned counter for each of the following that are true. That attack action was supported, and the target was a large fighter. So, in summary, this warband wants to condemn a target and then kill it to gain that token. And ultimately, as we'll get into, that will trigger their Inspire.
Yeah.
So, I think critically to note here is you won't get a condemned counter from a target unless they were supported, or they were a large fighter, or they were killed and they had a condemned counter on them. Yeah. But if you have all three of these, then you will get 3 condemned counters upon that fighter's death.
And that being their Inspire, after power step, you have 3 or more condemned counters. And I think this, like my initial take is like, that's a very different thing from previous Night Hunt warbands who had, at various times during the history of Underworlds, notoriously easy Inspire conditions. And I think it's a little bit more work to get these guys inspired.
Right, like the Banshees seemed pretty easy. Wraith Creepers just had to be within 2 hexes of them. Like, yeah, notoriously easy. So my initial read of this was like, oh my god, these guys are going to be a lot of work. I don't know. You got to put a target on that fighter's head, and then you have to go and fight for it. But
right,
we'll get into
yeah, to Inspire, right? You have to take minimum, 1 fighter out of action, and it, the hard way is 3 fighters out of action, but you can minimize that to even 2 if you can manage to take down either a large fighter that's been condemned or a supported fighter that's been condemned
with support.
Right. Yeah, the fact that well executed. Both the, your target that was just taken out of action by an attack, was supported or was a large fighter. The fact that that doesn't require them to be previously condemned is some good flexibility that I think they're going to need to reach inspiration.
Yep. So as the narrative card stated, there is a wielder, there is one to sharpen the sword, there is one to bear the block, and there's a scripter to condemn. So starting off with the leader, the wielder of the blade, doesn't actually have a name of his own. He flies. He has movement 4, 2 dodge, 5 health. His 1 attack profile is the sword Terminus. Range 1, 2 hammers, 3 damage with a reaction, Blade Bound. So Blade Bound is a reaction. After this attack action takes the target out of action, place a friendly fighter that is out of action in a hex adjacent to this fighter, then give that fighter 1 raise counter and 1 wound counter. So there's your respawn mechanic. The sword takes its soul and gives you a soul back. There will always be 1 wielder, 1 sharpener, 1 bearer of the block. So as you lose fighters, you theoretically will restaff this sword's supports.
I love that this soul is nameless. I love that they only have access to the attack profile Terminus. I think it's hilarious to imagine an additional attack profile like, Spare Fist of Fury or like Feeble Blade, like as if like their sole purpose wasn't indeed just Terminus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So notably, after they get 3 command counters, he inspires up to 5 move from 4, and his blade gains an extra damage going to 4.
Yeah.
Everything else remains the same. Spicy.
Yeah.
And he's like they stick around with that 2 dodge, 5 wounds right out of the gate.
Yeah, it doesn't suck.
A large fighter on 2 defense dice. Ooh, sign me up.
So if he's your respawn mechanic, I'm going to be a little precious with him, but at the same time, like he's the one who you want to do the chopping. So my thought, with only 2 hammers, I'm going to be looking for accuracy to add to this warband.
Yeah.
So trying to move a little bit faster, but I do have to cover the scripter because this is the condemned mechanic. So the other 3 fighters are all chain rasps, and the scripter is a chain rasp with fly, movement 4, 1 dodge, 3 health. Furious Indictment is his range 3, 2 hammers, 1 damage attack action. With the reaction Condemn, reaction after an activation step in which this fighter made this attack action, give the target 1 condemned counter. Key
Brian,
to note. What?
Did I hear the word successful attack action there? I seem to be missing the word successful. You said that, right?
I read the card, didn't I? Don't make me read it again.
Snap. Are you telling me that it doesn't care that if it was successful or not?
No, and when I first read this, I was like, oh my god, I have to get a successful attack off on this, and then I can go after that guy. So I have to keep Furious Indictment, like just wicked finger pointing at them. But like if it fails, it's like, okay, never mind, maybe. No, he has a wicked point, and sometimes it even causes enough dread to cause a wound. Love it. Yeah. It is a reaction, so be mindful of reactions that you give to this warband in case you block your own reaction with this.
That's a good point.
So on Inspire, he goes up to 2 dodge. He gains Stagger on his Furious Indictment, so he becomes even more you. He throws your middle name in there.
And I like that these other 2 like just kind of provide those benefits. So the bearer of the block is if he supporting you is giving you cleave,
right,
and then adjacent fighters can't be on guard. And then the sharpener of the blade can like take an action to increase damage and to the next successful attack action. So if you miss, then you haven't burned your sharpening thing.
Oh, that's where they put the word successful.
Yeah. Well, and that's a beneficial place to have it because you don't want to burn it on a missed attack.
Absolutely.
What I like is the idea that you can like have this warband that charges up for this like super important attack and then make sure it happens. Like
you can be really dramatic and just be like, first activation, second activation, just sharpen it up, and because it stacks, and you can take like first round, you can make the bearer or the wielder of the blade have a 5 damage attack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Important to note because of the respawn mechanic. The respawn puts a wound token on them, so it doesn't make them vulnerable, but it comes back with a wound on them. The scripter has 3, so he'll respawn with 2. The bearer of the block has 4. Chunky boy comes back, responds with 3. And then the sharpener is the 2-wound fighter with minion keyword, if that matters later. And so he'll respond vulnerable. The bearer of the block, I think, is notable because he has a 2 damage attack, and on Inspired, he goes up to 3, so he's pretty good backup. And like he said, if the bearer of the block is supporting the attack action from a friendly fighter, the range 1, range 2 attack actions have cleave, and the enemy fighter cannot be on guard. So I just imagine he's holding the big, heavy headsman block up behind the target's neck, like, yeah, my lord.
And he's the second healthiest. So if you're going to have any, of the chain rasps supporting the attack, he's the one to get into the mix and take a blow.
Good candidate.
Absolutely.
All right. Brian, I know you have any number of favorites, but we're going to steal them from you. Skylar.
You can try.
Skylar, do you have an objective that you want to highlight out of this warband?
I do indeed. Eager Assistant. Score this immediately. Surge. Score this immediately after the second or subsequent successful supported attack action made by friendly fighters in the same phase for 2 glory. Spicy indeed.
Do what we want to do.
Exactly.
2 glory.
Second or subsequent successful supported attack action. So they fit the word successful in here again. Made by friendly fighters in the same phase. That's pretty great, right? If you can just land 2 attacks and make sure you got the supports to do it. I mean, that can be an ask, right? But the fact that they're willing to spike that up to 2 glory for you means people are going to take this and they're going to try for it, and I'm all about that play.
Well, and this is a warband that has some support for support. In your power deck, you have ways to increase the number of attacks that you have that are getting support, which then cascades into being more likely to actually be successful at these attacks. So,
and I also was thinking, like, if you have, big heavy hitter swinging for big damage, like, you really need to make those land and count. So all the supports you can get would be beneficial, especially with the bearer of the block. And I was like, man, some push tech would be great. Oh boy, you got it.
Boy.
So Davey, before we get into why I'm also so excited, let's get into what I'm still excited about, more objectives. What's yours?
So I kind of like off with their heads. And I like it because I like this thing that they're doing now. Well, obviously the art is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It's Gore Hulk just not just losing his head. His head is like out of the picture frame here. But this thing that they do with objectives now, where there is this kind of like, you can score it with this, but if you score it in this other way, it's worth even more. And so it's after a friendly leader's attack action takes an enemy fighter out of action. Because your leader starts on 3 damage, this is very likely to happen. But it gets you an additional glory if that enemy fighter was the leader. So if you can line that up, which you're trying to do probably anyway, then this is a 2 glory surge. We've seen this before. Like this is a better duel, champions duel. I don't know. There was a there's a
Victorious duel.
Yeah. There you go.
Not only is Victorious Duel the card now, Swift Capture was the card from before.
Oh, yep.
Oh, right.
Well,
I got there eventually.
Yep. Now it's not going to be the flavor text quiz.
That's twice now tonight.
I keep sniping.
I have it lined up and highlighted in another tab here, because it's a cool quote, but
guess not.
There.
I also really like this design space, Davey.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
This is Victorious Duel, but with a, hey, if you can't quite line that up, here's something else that makes it worthwhile. And so I think it's a really clever design on this. So big fan of it.
Absolutely.
that.
And
Yeah.
Once again, it's do what you want to do, get a kill with your leader. You already want to do that and get an additional if it's a leader. It's
and the just the narrative, right, of like, I'm gonna grab an extra glory off your leader, off of your leader's head, right? Like, going into a fight with this warband, it's like, I might want to hold my leader back a little bit until I see off with their head.
Yeah. Well, Brian, have we taken all the good ones? Is there anything left?
Quick card art shout out to All Rise. Don't sleep on this art. Ephraim has some Technicolor blood there. It's fantastic. Great touch. Cool. But my favorite is, I think I've seen this meme before. This card is Gather a Crowd. Surge. Score this immediately after an activation step if 3 or more friendly fighters are within 2 hexes of the same enemy fighter. Duty for some, light entertainment for others. Listeners, let me know. Does this card art remind you of a meme? I think it does, but let me know. But as I was hinting at, do they have push tech? Yes, they have push tech. This seems super easy. This seems like it's really promoting a hard counter punch warband. And yeah, if you're an aggro band going up against them, it is a terrifying prospect to charge into them to begin with. And this just makes it even more feels bad. Like, ugh.
Yeah. So what I like about this is that often in a warband like this, I might try to like nibble at the edges if I'm feeling conservative. But if I think I see the opportunity, I might try to dive the leader. And this, just the possible existence as this says, like, you can try to dive the leader, but you are going to pay a price if you do so, because you may end up triggering Gather a Crowd. There's not much worse than letting somebody else score a surge when you are taking the activation.
Yeah, and even if you're having to invade, I think they've got tech to support it. So I don't think it's a bad pick.
So I think Brian is seeing memes where Brian wants to see memes, but I agree with both of you.
My wife, and she agreed.
I think this is a really strong surge, especially in rounds 1 and 2. It becomes much less so in round 3, but surges should get the ball rolling. So I'm behind this one.
Yep. Well, let's move on to gambits. I'm going to go with Condemned Step Forward for mine. This is choose 2 fighters that are adjacent to each other, 1 or more of which is an enemy fighter. Place each fighter in the hex that was occupied by the other fighter. When you chose them, give each chosen enemy fighter 1 condemned counter. So this is a way to set up those kills that will get you towards your Inspire, or possibly an objective that we haven't discussed. But sometimes just having like a confusion is pretty amazing. So I think there are multiple applications for this. It can be just setting up an attack. It can be messing with the enemy, like getting them out of the spot that they want to be. I think it's a cool little tech piece that is sometimes fine and sometimes amazing.
I think that this card would have been good enough at an in-faction confusion, but the fact that it also adds a condemned counter onto the enemy fighter is incredible.
Yep.
Or 2. If two enemy fighters are unfortunate enough to be hanging out next to each other.
Sure. Skylar, what would you pick for a gambit?
So my absolute hands down favorite gambit for this warband is Scapegoat.
Ooh.
I cannot love this card enough. And I'm going to start with the flavor text. No. I'll end with the flavor text. Choose an enemy fighter. The chosen fighter has a wounds characteristic of 5, unless it would be higher. So it's not going to flex somebody with 6 or 7 wounds down to 5. It's only going to bring somebody up to 5. This effect persists until the end of the round. Give the chosen fighter 1 stagger token and 1 condemned counter. So before I read the flavor text, this card says, get on board with the condemnation game plan. give us as many tokens as we can get from you, right? So if a 1 dodge, fighter feels compelled to charge into this warband, they might find themselves quickly turning into a large fighter, which is going to get them an extra condemned token if they can take them down. It's going to assign them a condemned counter already, which means if they take that fighter out, they're going to withdraw that condemned counter from them, putting them at 2. And if they're able to support that attack, that's 3. Like Scapegoat alone can get this warband inspired off of 2 attacks, right? Or less, depending on +1 damage upgrades. And then this card goes a step further to just cement itself as an awesome card because it includes the flavor text. Guilty? ? Preferable. Innocent? Impossible. Within reach? Perfect.
I love this card. It's my favorite out of the set. I love the design space, and it's like it does offer this warband the viability of, like, say they had a large fighter that you were targeting and then they managed to flee them, get them away or something, and you can just be like, all right, I'd pick on the little guy then. Or if it's a really hard castle, you can pick one of the wall fighters instead of one of the guys behind. If you're fighting a castled up Ephelem, you can pick on one of the changers instead.
Well, and one of the best things about it, I think, is sure, it gives you a chance to take down a large target and get that extra, condemned counter from a large target. Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. It'll tee up an extra glory in the bounty department as well. But if let's say your follow-up attacks miss against your target, but you were able to get 2-3 damage off, right? And it was a 2 wound or 3 wound target to begin with. As soon as the round ends, they're going to die anyways. And this card at a minimum put a condemned counter on them, so you're going to get that condemned counter and reward just when they fall out of action. Hopefully, the stagger token is helping you secure the kill in that large fighter status. But if it doesn't, at least you're getting that single condemned counter off the target.
Yeah, I missed that. Here's a very kind of stealth / corner case thing, but there are a number of upgrades in the game that may not be applied to a large fighter, and with the new rules,
I don't think that's a corner case. That's an excellent case.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think Rippas are going to get punished by this, not
so much,
because you can if they have any upgrades on them that break if their fighter is large, this will make them large and break those upgrades.
Fantastic. Like, me and Skylar have discussed this card quite a bit already, and I hadn't even considered that. I thought this card was already amazingly flexible. It's crazy.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that either.
And it's also a choose, so if they have illusions, screw those too.
Yep.
I mean, it'll inspire, your Spike Claw Swarm Skaven, right? So, I mean, I put that in the cons column.
Yeah.
Trash. All right.
0 out of 5. Are we just on you, Brian? What do you got?
Yep. So there are a ton of push text, but we know what push tech does. It's great. They even have an in-faction hidden paths
here on this podcast. But
I love push. But they even have an in-faction hidden paths. But I want to talk about You Must Serve. The design space for this respawn card, I think, is fantastic. So You Must Serve. Place a friendly chain rasp that is out of action on a starting hex in your territory. Give that fighter 1 raise counter. Then, if there are 4 surviving friendly fighters, give this fighter wound counters until that fighter is vulnerable. So what that means is that if you're doing well and all of your fighters are alive now that you've respawned this guy, he's vulnerable. Because it's like, dude, you're already doing all right. But if you are getting kicked in and you have another fighter that's out of action at least, this fighter comes back on full health. That's a crazy. I love that. Like, because we've seen respawn mechanics where it's at full health be pretty oppressive, and then cards that are respawn on vulnerable. Granted, that was a universal card that could be used in any death warband. That even got restricted because you could bring back a 4-wound vampire. This could bring a 4-wound bearer of the block back. It just can't be used on the wielder, which I think is smart.
Yeah. I like the nuance on this card. I like, we've seen a lot of resurrect gambits over a number of different death warbands, and I guess spike claws as well. But I like that how they've kind of refined that design to create a pretty balanced card.
Because then it's like, even if your attack actions aren't landing, you can't even get a swing to kill with your wielder to spawn them the normal way with the soulbound or whatever his reaction is. But this allows you a no dice required respawn.
Yeah.
Something I've been noticing with the release drop that we're getting with the starter set, with Headman's Curse, with Void Curse Thralls, there's a lot that I don't normally attach myself to the narrative meaning behind the cards. And I don't know if I've been missing out and it's just recently struck with me. But when a card is able to not only be interesting from a mechanical standpoint, but to fit into this awesome narrative space as well and tell a story, it really elevates the card for me. And like I said, I don't know if that's been going on all along and I'm only tapping into it now, but You Must Serve, wow. The flavor text here, the ability, the fact, that there must be 4 serving the sword is just fantastic.
Yeah, like I said, one of my favorite warbands from concept to mechanics translated so well.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And that flavor, I should spell that out real quick, is for You Must Serve, Brian's pick here, Bound Terminus, the anguished dead arise at its command.
Oof.
I love the idea that this warband of ghosts is really just a sword.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's a cool take. The idea of Night Haunt, I think, has been. This feels like the most Night Haunt warband that there is.
It's very grim, and the art is also haunting.
Yeah,
this release is making me think I need to tap into the story phase a little more.
Ooh. Yeah. Fair enough.
Indeed.
I do think that GW's Grand Alliance death is my favorite aspect of Age of Sigmar. I think their death factions are some of the most unique in fantasy, in the way that they make death more relatable and also just really interesting takes. Instead of just a curse here, a necromancer there.
Yeah. In that respect, there was a novel that came out with the season 2 of AOS, like the 2.0. I think it was Soul Wars, and that is a really good insight into death in general and Night Haunt as well. And I thought that was a really well-written one. If I'm not mistaken, it's a Josh Reynolds, which is one of our favorites over on the story phase. But
sign me up. I'll have to give that a read.
All right. Done and done. But we are on to upgrades. I'm going to read you an upgrade. I feel like this is maybe the category that is not quite as exciting as some of the others, although there's some great ones in here.
Right.
But I will go with a Lurking Crony. When a friendly fighter adjacent to this fighter makes an attack action, the fighter supports this fighter. It's restricted to chain rasps. This provides a lot more flexibility with where you position your fighters to get those supports. And so that helps with your gaining condemned counters. And it also lets you support, like, if you're just trying to do some chip damage with the scripter who's doing those long range things, like it suddenly becomes really easy to make him fairly accurate. Inspire him just by standing next to him is not too hard. So I think that's a low key, fairly powerful upgrade, and I'm a fan.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And they have the bearer of the block, like actually supporting the wielder.
Yeah. Like he's fist pumping behind the wielder.
He's
of the
like,
blade.
yeah, go.
you're so great. I love you. Yeah. Skylar, what do you like for upgrades here?
My favorite upgrade in here is job satisfaction.
Okay, I am a little mad at you for this one, but yes.
Oh gosh,
A+ card title.
Great.
Absolutely. And this is another card where everything comes together. The art paired with the name job satisfaction is fantastic. The flavor here is Terminus only wants one thing, and it always gets what it wants. And our reaction here, it is a reaction upgrade. After an activation step in which this fighter made one or more attack actions, give this fighter one guard token. And that is an awesome ability. The rest of the card aside, especially when you take a look at their defensive profiles and you see that all of them inspire into 2 dodge, and some of them start on that 2 dodge. 2 of the 4 start there, the rest get there. So being able to flex from dodge over to dodge and guard or block is just fantastic.
Yeah, love it. Brian, that leaves you with a final choice for this warband. What do you got?
So just brief shout out. They have an infection, great fortitude. They have an infection, great strength that's restricted to the chain rest. Thank God. Those are great tools in a warband. But this, again, to pair with all of that push tech we haven't even touched on. Chilling Grasp for my upgrade. Enemy fighters adjacent to this fighter cannot make move actions. Hold still. Restricted to chain rasps. Yeah. So good. You get this chain rasp up there and you're just like, well, I need to get the heck out of here. And you throw this upgrade on and like, no.
Brian's like, how many pushes did you bring? Because I brought more.
Yep. And what I love the art on this is like, well, what's chilling about that grasp? That's just a grasp. That's not a chilling grasp. You're just like picking up a goblin by his cloak, you know.
But, I'm glad you asked, because that's a Loon Court goblin, and I get chills seeing those guys get beat up on. I despise them.
Different type of chills. But I mean, I imagine if you were that goblin size and something floating ethereal picked you up, that'd be pretty chilling.
All right. Yeah, fair enough.
It's chilling when this goes down, and for 3 activate. So, like this goes down, and then theoretically, you know, for 2 activations, you just have the sharpener. Shh.
Oh boy. I mean, as far as warbands go, like we're wrapping this one up. I'm really excited to see these guys. I'm really excited to get a deep dive on these. Brian, I know you're trying to focus on FLM, so I might steal these guys out from under you. And
I love the design of these. I gotta paint Chaos. I rep Chaos. These guys are so close second. If they hadn't come out in the same edition or in the same season, by all means, I want to see what you do with them because they're so fun.
I can't echo that enough. But funny enough, I have not seen Brian as excited about a warband since Dread Pageant as he is for this warband. So it feels a little weird almost, you know, hearing him say, no, I'm focusing on Ephelum, because this one he hasn't been able to hold his excitement in about how much he likes this warband.
Well, gentlemen, that leaves us with just one more thing in the new releases, and that is, I'm going to just say it, the weirdest of the 4 things that we are covering here in our brief overview of the Deluge of Releases, and that is the Void Curse Thrall's Rivals deck. Skylar, you've been our point man on this. why don't you give us the kind of overview of this? Maybe some theme and the plot card?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I'm gonna take a page out of Brian's book here, and I'm gonna read for you, our dear listeners, the Void Curse Thralls.
You're going to read the art
card?
card?
Yes, the art card reads rad.
So good.
Weirdly, there is a full card art inclusion in here, which totally awesome.
Agree. I genuinely hope we see more of this.
Yeah, totally.
Is it Ephelum? I think Ephelum has their plot card on the back side of their, like, here's the cards that come in the deck. And I remember seeing that. I'm like, lame. Like, I wish that these were two separate cards. Yeah. So, with no further ado, the Void Curse Thralls. A curious affliction has been observed in Wyrdhollow. Loosed realm shaper energies strike living creatures and alter them to some unknown purpose. More sinister still, those affected appear to lose their volition, becoming vessels for power and will not their own. While little is known about these emotionless, void-cursed thralls, what is certain is that they are entirely devoted to their mysterious cause, forgoing sleep, safety, and in some cases, survival. Those who seek to prevent or defeat them risk falling prey to the same cosmic hex, their flesh being slowly claimed by the star-dotted blackness of the void itself until they are a little more than silhouettes. And I think this deck does an incredible job of leaning into exactly what is written there.
Yeah. So
to jump into our next piece, we have their plot card. So a quick breakdown of that is So this is plot locked. So for championship, that matters, right? Because at this point in time, if you want to pick a card from here, that means you're going to forgo cards from Tooth and Claw, Daring Delvers, and Fearsome Fortress, which I think is rather interesting.
It's a big ask because there's some good stuff in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. If you're rocking Void Curse Thralls, it comes with this plot card. It defines first Void Cursed. At the start of a round, if there are no friendly surviving Void Cursed fighters, choose one surviving friendly fighter. The chosen fighter is Void Cursed. And then before I kind of break that down, I'm going to continue to define what being Void Cursed means. Void Curse fighters cannot make actions other than move actions, attack actions, and charge actions. So limited to those three actions when activating. Void Curse fighters cannot make range 3+ attack actions. Void Cursed fighters cannot be driven back. And Void Cursed fighters have a defense characteristic of 1 shield or block. And actually, I just realized as I was running this down that that middle clause there, Void Curse fighters cannot make actions other than move actions, attack actions, and charge actions. There's a rule in the rulebook that talks about can and cannot, and cannot always wins over can when it is being delivered to you from a card. So, like if the rule book says cannot and a card says can, it wins, right? Because cards win over the rule book. But when two cards are telling you can and cannot wins. So I made a point as I was running that down to say that Void Curse fighters cannot make move, attack, or charge actions when activated. But really, it's not limited to when they're activated. They straight can't do it at all. There's no card.
There's
no card that can break that rule for them because the cannot that this plot card is bringing is winning.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And my favorite bit about this.
So the Sepulchral Guard finally don't rely on the tokens, but they can't make a move if they're a Void Curse Thrall.
No, they can make a. They can make a move.
They can make a move. Just don't void curse the Sepulchral Warden.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. And my favorite bit about this pot card, and I think as we kind of dive into the deck, you'll see why. Because is that the first bit there at the start of a round, if there are no surviving friendly Void Curse fighters, choose one surviving friendly fighter and make them Void Cursed. So you're going into every round with a guaranteed Void Cursed fighter at the start of that round. And you're going to hear the word Void Cursed a lot, by the way, as we run this down. I think that's really great, and something that these keyword puzzles kind of miss out on sometimes is that they can't guarantee at the beginning of every round that you will have that keyword in play. But this goes that step to make sure that you will.
Yeah.
So as an example, I think this question may be valuable to listeners that may be confused on what actions can or can't be taken. So if Deluge and the Exiled Dead are playing against Void Cursed, or if they are playing with the Void Cursed deck, one of the zombies, if they are Void Cursed, they can only move, attack, or charge, right?
Right.
But if Deluge tells them to do the dance, they can still do that.
Well,
right.
so
because Deluge, as long as Deluge is not Void Cursed,
right? But
there
if Deluge is Void Cursed, then he can't do his dance action because he can only move, charge, or attack.
Exactly.
Okay, I understood that. I just wanted to point that out to listeners that may be questioning. So.
And that last caveat of the Void Curse fighters have a defense characteristic of 1 block, like that really kind of influences what warbands are going to be looking at this. If you're a warband that really wants to live or die on your 2 defense dice, then maybe this is a tough pick for you.
Agree.
Right.
But we'll know more about that once we take a look at the cards.
So when taking a look at these cards, as the point man on this deck, I would like both Davey and Brian to take a pick first when we're discussing favorites. So with that, I'm stealing the wheel. And Davey, would you tell me what your favorite objective is here?
Well, that's a tough one, but I think I'm going to go with Gathered Thralls. This is a 2 glory surge. It's a duel. Score this immediately after an opponent's activation step. If 3 or more Void Cursed fighters are adjacent to each other, and 1 or more of those fighters are enemy fighters. And this feels like Scrum from the Beastgrave era. It's purely positioning plus a little bit of application. The deck has some ways to turn the enemy warband into Void Cursed. I am really interested in how this deck operates. Like, it has a goal card. Maybe one of you will pick, but like this idea of like it's this crazy, like you talked about, like this Void Curse thing in the thematics. You're spreading this infection, and this one does that. I love a 2 glory positioning surge. I actually don't know if this is good or not, but I really want to investigate it. Brian, what other objective in this deck did you enjoy?
Beside Skylar's Unwitting stance, I chose Unwitting Guardians. Score this in an end phase if 1 or more friendly Void Cursed fighters are on a feature token. For 1 glory end phase, seems pretty simple. You get a Void Cursed right out the gate, stand them on a feature token, reliable glory. Seems like a safe pick.
Fair enough. Skylar, you're a point man on this one. What did you like?
Yeah. So when we had Josh earlier on the episode, we were able to tackle 4 cards in an episode. So,
oh wow,
you dirty dog!
With that in mind, I'm going to tackle 3 and 4 here.
All right.
So first, I want to point out their goal card, as Davey referenced earlier, is Reshaped Realm. Score this in an end phase if each surviving fighter is Void Cursed. So That's your friendly and your enemy fighters, all void cursed for glory.
Yeah.
Old.
I think a 4 glory end phase is enough for you to like consider this being like, well, maybe I build a deck around this. Like that is spicy.
Agree. I love this as a goal card. I think
It's certainly going to be better against elite warbands.
Yep.
I think when this scores, it's going to be so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agree.
Does this go in Davy's bucket list score items?
Already did.
Nice. Perfect. Well, my other choice here is Tipping Point. So Tipping Point, I actually don't think this is a good card, but it is one that I wanted to highlight because it's a favorite. I think it's a really interesting card, and narratively, again, that's been grabbing me lately. At least with this full set of releases.
I think we should definitely say for the narrative on this, each of the flavor text, if there is flavor text on these cards, is a journal entry in a scientist studying this void curse.
Ooh,
and
yeah.
Really fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're not familiar with the scholar Tinus von Artsen, you're going to be. He's going to make sure of it.
Spoiler alert, I don't think any of us have heard of him before this deck, but
that's a question for the story phase.
Yep.
But Tipping Point in particular, this is a surge, and it really tells a story within this 32 card deck. Score this immediately after an activation step if there are more surviving void cursed fighters than surviving fighters that are not void cursed.
Aptly named.
I love the idea, the indiscriminacy here of it's not about your warband or my warband. It's about the amount of void cursed among us. And I'm pushing this game plan towards the void cursed. Can you like hold back? Can you keep this mortal coil, for yourself?
Yeah. It's cool.
Really dig it. And in the art, we have the Elethane Soul Raid already succumbed to the Void Curse. And the crab jumping over the line. Trying
to smoke Oberyn, which is way rude. Yeah.
Yep. So that would be my favorite entry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, on that note, I think the art is amazing in these cards, and it really helps communicate. Like, if you're just listening to this, like, go take a look at the art on this card, and it's going to really help kind of communicate the idea behind this deck. Like, it's really something else.
Because each of the zombies aren't just zombified; they are covered over with a star map like static.
Yeah,
and some of the flavor text even calls out that there's a thrumming sound whenever one is near. So like it could really build like an atmospheric creep to it.
Love that. Yeah. Circling back to their goal card, the flavor there is some regions of Wyrdhollow have fallen near silent, save for the thrum of the void cursed.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm curious if somebody really like finds a warband that clicks with this this Nemesis deck.
Let's circle back around to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a little bit.
Agree. So on that note,
Brian. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Brian, go ahead.
What?
Give us your favorite gambit.
My favorite gambit is going to be the bestest gambit, and the gambit that this warband is going to be praying for to come up. Void Cursed Assault.
Oh, you dirty dog.
Yeah! Each friendly Void Cursed fighter makes the following attack action. Reactions cannot be made during this attack action. Range 1, 2 hammers, 1 damage, reshape. Reshape. If this attack action succeeds, the target is Void Cursed. Bad touch.
This card just reads fun to me.
Yeah.
I just love how big a like the the big moments, the great moments with this are going to be so big and so great.
Right.
Agree.
Yeah. So it's crazy. It's almost like old school Exiled Dead. All of your fighters make this attack action, and they don't get to react. So it's like old school Exiled Dead pre-beta rule, where the reactions didn't happen.
Well, and any upgrades apply. Like if you have great strength, that applies. If you have fighter ferocity, if you have dark parasites, all that stuff applies on this.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. This card's
if you have accuracy upgrades, oh my god.
This card's a blast. And at minimum, you're going to have one fighter each round that's going to be able to take advantage of this. And if you funneled those upgrades into that fighter to give those plus damages, oof.
Out of sequence attack actions, those are good, right?
Yeah.
So I've heard.
Walter, we need those.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Very much so.
So, Davey, up next. What's your favorite gambit?
Yeah. So, what I really like about the design on this deck is it has you have to balance this. Like, how much effort am I going to put into making people void cursed versus how many ways am I going to capitalize on people being void cursed? And one of the ways you can capitalize on it is with forced movements. And this is choose a friendly void cursed fighter, make one move action with the chosen fighter. Wild. Like you can have charge. You can use this to move somebody to safety. You can use this to move like somebody into a position to make multiple attacks. Like you can really, there's a ton of stuff you can surprise with on here. Caveat being, you got to get them void cursed. And so obviously you've always got somebody void cursed, but are you going to try to get more than one, or how are you going to do that? But that's very emblematic of a number of the gambits in this deck, which are choose somebody who's void cursed, do a very powerful thing with that person who is void cursed.
Yeah, I think force movements is an incredible card. One of the things that elevates force movements again, and I mentioned this when I was reading through the plot card, right, is that every round, as long as you have a surviving friendly fighter, if you don't have a void cursed amongst them, you will going into the round.
Yeah.
And I think that really brings something to this game plan into considering this deck across Nemesis and Championship.
Yeah.
I suppose with that, I'll jump into my favorite gambit here, which is Involuntary Advance. So this card reads, choose a void curse fighter, push the chosen fighter 1 hex. And that is wild because you can choose an enemy void cursed. If you manage to set that up, you can choose a friendly void cursed. So this card is essentially flexibly and without range limitations, a distraction or a sidestep. Wow. I love this card.
Push tech is dope.
Agree.
Yeah, as well you should. Like the payoff for getting more void cursed out there on this is really high.
And to that end, segue, Reshaping Burst, another gambit in this deck, and one to their game plan. Choose a void cursed fighter, roll a magic dice for each fighter within 2 hexes of the chosen fighter, and on a roll of a focus, that fighter is void cursed. And I wanted to bring this one up real quickly because just like Reshaped Realm, this is a really fun card towards their game plan. This could be incredibly explosive, and in some games this could do nothing because it doesn't say that, when you're rolling for that focus result, the crit is going to count. It's not here. So that brings it down to a third of the dice facings, working towards you as you're trying to void curse out the people around your selected fighter. But selecting enough fighters, the probability that one of them is going to happen pretty good. And, in some games, that's just going to be memorably explosive.
Yeah. Totally agree. Who do you think we're seeing on this card? Is this Velas Von Fane?
I think so. Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Initially I thought it must be like one of the Blade Coven, but on further reflection, I think it must be Velas.
I actually thought it was
Vampire Fangs.
I thought it was Blade Coven too, and I was like, where are those Vampire Fangs coming from? So the fact that you just threw Velas out there, I was just like, well, there goes the mystery for me.
It's the shoulder guard too.
You're just spot on.
All right.
I originally thought one of the Godsworn Hunt, like with the wild hair, but no, Velas definitely has a beat on that.
God. Yeah.
I clearly do not know anything about Godsworn Hunt, or do I care to?
And on that note, we're gonna skip Brian and his hot anti-battle mallet takes.
You got there eventually, folks.
No editing required. I'll land it. I will. Davey, you're up next. What is your favorite upgrade?
Oof. That is that's a tough one. So I like how they continue to like lean into this idea of like, let's do some cards that either turn people into void cursed or benefit from having void cursed. They have a surprising number of movement tricks, and I think depending on the warband, you may in fact see some of these. These are, I don't know, I'm sorry to waffle, but I think these are the reasons you might start to see this deck taken over other ones if you really want those movement shenanigans. And so I'm talking about like refashion priorities. And this is a reaction. Use this after another fighter's move action or attack action. That's not another friendly fighter. That's any other fighter's move action or attack action. If that fighter is not adjacent to this fighter can make a move action that must end on a feature token. That this reaction cannot be used more than once per round. This is an incredible reaction to use for warbands that care about standing on things. And there's kind of a partner one that is similar, refashion reactions. So I'm going to steal your two, Skylar. This time it's main. And that's use this after another fighter's move action or attack action. If that fighter is not adjacent to this fighter makes one move action that must end adjacent to one or more fighters. This reaction cannot be used more than once per round. That is incredibly flexible. That's if a friendly or an enemy fighter has done a move or attack, move and then end up adjacent to an enemy or a friendly, that is pretty spectacular. So those two can really provide some pretty incredible shenanigans as far as positioning. And I think they on their own are a reason to maybe consider this as your plat-locked deck.
I couldn't agree more. Those windows are fantastic. Those abilities are fantastic. These cards slap.
And I've stolen the good ones. I'm out. Bye.
All right.
Sure.
Well, before I deal with what is left for me, Brian, you're up.
Hey, Skylar, is singular reshaping bad?
Is singular reshaping bad? Yeah, unfortunately it is.
No, it's not. You're wrong. I read the card. So instead of giving this card to a friendly fighter, you can pick an opponent. That opponent chooses a surviving fighter in their warband and gives this upgrade to that fighter. This fighter is void cursed. Why is it bad, Skylar?
All right. So first off, I love that you're baiting me here because I want to love this card. I love the idea of handing this over to your opponent, paying the glory, and saying, all right, who are you going to put this on? But the downside is I don't see any reason they couldn't equip it to an already void cursed fighter.
Yeah.
And that's the downside. If this is the first enemy fighter that you're getting cursed, absolutely this card rocks. But past the first, if your opponent reads it and thinks about it for 2 seconds, they're just going to put it on somebody who's already void cursed.
So why would I give it to them? I could just give it to my own fighter.
That's true. I think the reason that your opponent gets to pick who it goes on is actually because Gathered Thralls exists in this deck. I think if you could pick as the player playing this, and then set up Gathered Thralls for a 2 surge, I think my guess is that somewhere in playtesting they were like, that feels like a little too feels bad.
No, like
And,
I totally get that. If this comes out early round, give it to your opponent. They're just like, I got to put it on somebody, right?
Yeah.
And then if they put it on somebody that they're happy with dying, you just leave them and you keep targeting the other people.
Sure.
Either for death.
Brian,
what?
You blew my mind, and
I read the card, eh?
I want to make that perfectly known. I read this card, and all I could focus on was the fact that you were handing it to your opponent. But Brian is infamous for reading half a card. Notice the you can pick an opponent, and you can use this as fuel on your own side, and that what that raises this card in my mind. Well done. Woo.
Well,
good pick.
But if nothing else, is a great one to highlight for. This is a unique interaction. Like, we've never seen the ability to upgrade an enemy fighter before. I love it. I would love to see this. I'm just going to put this out there. Totally non sequitur, totally wild shot. If we see another Nurgle warband, I would love to see the ability to upgrade enemy fighters with like stuff that is like Nurgleoid, that is bad on enemy fighters, good on your fighters. Just putting that out there into the world.
Absolutely.
I love that so much. I love that so much. But I also want to call out energy converter reaction after this.
All right.
Reaction after this fighter's range 1 attack action takes an enemy fighter out of action. Heal 1 this fighter. Restricted to Void Cursed, and I bring this up because I want to talk about it later.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about it right now.
Later is now.
Skylar has to give his share.
No, let's break this down.
No, we've already done 4. You did. I did 2. You did 2. He doesn't get any. So.
Okay.
Thrum.
I mean, straight busted on a big fighter, right? Like, we've seen. I think it was Vampiric Weapon all the way back in season 1. That was great on some of these. I like that this is down to a range 1 attack action. That makes it not as insane as it could be.
I can't imagine how, like, the stories that this card is going to bring to the table. Imagine fighting the exiled dead and running Mighty Swing, an energy converter.
Oh no.
You're on a hope and a prayer, you're vulnerable, whoever you are, and you've got a range 1 attack. You run in with Mighty Swing and you just execute, right? And you're going to heal after every one of those successful executions.
Yeah. I was thinking of this on...
go ahead.
I was thinking of this on Mollog. And we'll talk about that later, but I was like, God, a large fighter, if they're able to just smack you at range 1, granted, most of them usually prefer their range 2 attacks, but Mollog does have a range 1 scything, so that could be a problem.
I mean, that's where I come down on this, is like, they must have looked at this and said, if we make them have to be, so it's restricted to Void Cursed, and it has to be range 1, that's enough restriction. Because usually you see this sort of heal thing, say, like, this doesn't work on large fighters.
Yeah.
But I think they must have decided there was enough restrictions.
Yeah, but if I could just pick my Void Curse fighter to be my large Rothgorn, his range 1 attack action is 3 damage. Like, that's pretty good.
Yeah. It's good. It's cool.
I think this card is another reason people will choose this deck. And
interesting.
For that alone, it excites me.
Yeah.
No, this card's cool. Davey, correct me if I'm wrong. So as long as I've been in the game, I can't think of a heal trigger this good.
You mean on an upgrade?
On an upgrade.
Yeah, probably in the Beastgrave era. I don't think they've done something like this. Listeners, you're welcome to correct us on this. Most of my memories are attached to Shadespire Nightvault era cards, so that are on this like level.
Really,
And I'm not saying this is busted. I think they've made some great choices on how to restrict this. But
agree. I really like the Void Curse restriction here. I think that's really fun.
Yep. Yeah, because here's the thing: like, if you want to put this on somebody, what you're not going to be able to do is power them up for like super powerful defensive, because they're going to be stuck on one block and they can't have like really rad actions because they can only attack and overcharge.
See, I was worried about Rothgorn being a problem, but I forgot that he will stay at 1 shield instead of being inspired to 2 shield.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. I think they really threaded the needle on this card. Yep. And there's an interesting space too, where if you're kind of leaning away from Void Curse, but still pick this as your plot deck, right? Where it's like every round you're kind of only hoping for about 1 Void Cursed surviving friendly fighter. There's a chance where if your current Void Cursed of the round goes down, and you're like, you know what, for this particular matchup, I want to salvage this. There's that option as well.
Sure.
Which I think is really interesting in Championship, just kind of exploring what bringing the Void Curse Thralls into your Championship deck can do for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a weird deck. And I'm looking forward to seeing it played. I think of any Rivals deck I've ever seen them put out, any Universal Rivals deck, this is the one I most want to see played as an entire deck, right?
Same.
Yeah. My initial thought was this is similar to Toxic Terrors in the sense of like, it kind of relies on itself. So it feels more like a Rivals deck where you start with this and then you add a warband that will complement it. And then you add cards to this deck, but you're taking a bulk of these cards. I think Toxic Terrors is like that because it relies so heavily on the poison keyword. This one may be a little less so, but you're still, if you're really going in on the mechanic of turning people into Void Cursed to try, if you're like actually trying to spread the zombie plague and get the whole board filled, because you can still target the fighters that aren't Void Cursed to kill them and remove them and just increase the percentage that is Void Cursed on the board.
Sure, totally. That feels very space zombie.
Yeah, agree.
If you won't join us, die.
Well, and without diving back into card categories that we've already covered, there are two reliable One Glory end phase cards in this deck, hyper reliable One Glory end phase cards in this deck. And it's curious to see, how much cards like that fit into tipping you over into considering this as your plot card in both Nemesis and Championship. Yeah. Feel free to check those out. We got them posted on our blog. Shameless plug.
Yeah.
So I suppose even though 4 upgrades have been taken, there's actually a lot to talk about in the upgrade camp. So I'll jump in and throw one more at our listeners. There is Thrall Maker, which will help with your game plan, but it's not my pick. Check it out. My pick will be a Wary Warrior. So torn between this one and Unthinking Aid, both help with repositioning. But the reason I'm going to highlight a Wary Warrior is because it's a reaction after this fighter's activation. If this fighter is adjacent to one or more fighters, push this fighter 1 hex. After this push, this fighter cannot be adjacent to another fighter. I'm just largely a fan of things like Soundless Step and upgrades that provide you the ability to reposition after your activation. I find that there's a lot of flexibility in what they can do for you. And here with Wary Warrior, at a minimum, sometimes this is all you need to force a charge or a gambit that Gambit being like a push out of your opponent. I dig it.
Yeah. Yeah. Even more powerful if you have a range 2 attack.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think that brings us to the end of one of the stranger Rivals decks we've ever seen. And to that extent, like, are many, many releases for these. Gentlemen, do you have any more thoughts on Void Cursed Thralls here?
Feels like X-Files in Warhammer Underworlds.
Ooh. All right, I can't top that.
Man, it has a very great marriage of theme with gameplay from what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I do want to talk briefly about warbands that we think would be a good pairing with this. When
I absolutely
like that.
Almost forgot that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So one of the things I kept thinking of is like, how many fighters do I bring to this if I'm trying to go full bore into spreading the sickness and making more Void Cursed Thralls? I don't know how viable that is, and then like how reliable it is to convert Void Cursed Thralls, and then how many fighters do I bring? But then I was like, as we were going through this card, and why I brought up Energy Converter is I think there's a lot of out of sequence actions, whether it be attack or move or push. I'm wondering if we're going to see big boys really abuse this to really start swinging their large bulk and attacks around, being void cursed and just using all these out of sequence abilities, relying less on the infection mechanic and spreading the void curse, but more just using those actions and then supplementing a championship deck with those out of sequence actions.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up an interesting point, which is there's a couple ways to go about this, and one is to keep your warband count, like your fighter count, low in your warband to try to increase the percentage of fighters that are void cursed on the battlefield, and the other is to like come with a bigger warband and leverage things like the everybody who's void cursed attacks and potentially get like more attacks because you have so many void cursed. So
yeah, there isn't a format that I'm not excited to see explore void cursed thralls. From plugging it in Rivals to, a variety of warbands to merging it in Nemesis with, I'd be curious to see what those splits look like, how much people lean into Void Cursed Thralls when they're splitting it with a warband specific deck. To Championship, do they bring a single card with them to get access to the plot? Do they bring 2, 3? This card or this Rivals deck just has my juices flowing. I'm really excited about it.
This feels like one of the most mad scientist enabling Rivals decks that we've seen.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Wholeheartedly.
I mean, even the flavor text.
Yeah, 100%. Right.
On that, they've really been leaning into card order 1 through 32, and I cannot recommend enough reading the Descent to card 32 and reading card 32.
Yeah, it's actually reading journal entries, and it's actually got a story phase all on its own.
Yeah. I wonder if we'll learn anything more about this strange guy who's learning about this. So
before we wrap it up, one warband. I'm going to limit you both to one warband that you're excited to try or see tried paired with Void Cursed Thralls. We're going to start with Brian. What's your pick? Don't take mine. Second. I can find it. I can find it in you. Do not betray me.
I don't recall, but mine is Canaan's Reapers.
Ooh, all right.
You got the move mechanics with the different guys shuffling with their what is it called? Mortec Advance, And then you got Kanan. I'm going to make Kanan my Void Curse to begin with. I'll either use the Mortex to shield him and just keep him going, or you can use the Mortex to get up in their grill. If the Mortex really start popping off and get going viral, then I might start really going in the infection. But I think I'm going to... my inclination is to abuse the out-of-sequence actions first.
All right. I like that. Davey, where are you at?
Oof. I waffled for a while here. I think I'm going to go with Gore Chosen. I think I like the idea of experimenting with a low fighter warband. They got enough health to stick around.
They do have the health, and they don't really get off one block anyways.
The not naturally inspiring past one block defense.
Yeah, so they don't suffer from that one block, and then not being driven back is actually kind of a cool thing for them too. So,
and also Drom, you just don't Void Curse him, and you can still use his Enrage mechanic.
Well, and going back to the heal thing, like Gorehulk, if Gorehulk could just like slamming people and healing on the fly, like I think there's something there. So
again, big boy abuse.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What about you, Skylar?
Well, my pick does come with drawbacks, but I would pick the Cunning Crew.
Ooh.
One of the reasons I picked the Cunning Crew is because they have a surge that went uncovered by us, but the surge talks about, let me take a look at it real quick. Lashed into motion, score this immediately after the third or subsequent move action made by a friendly.
Yeah, there it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that would be a fantastic surge with them, right? I was thinking about it. You could even, just cheekily, anytime anybody else is doing something, you could have a fighter just dancing around Manic.
Yeah.
Just scoring 100%. That for you.
Just if you want a free glory, just sprint one of those little minions around Manok on your first one. Yep. That's worth a glory.
Yep. So,
oh boy.
So that would be my primary pick. I mean, Manic and Torka, they also, like the Gore Chosen, don't have to worry about moving off of one block. It does if you're void cursing Gikit, Shank, or Kirkran.
That's substantial.
Yeah, you're curbing their inspire, but can you spare one of them? I think you can.
Yeah. And you don't have to start there. And also because you can't do range 3 attacks with those. So I guess Shank is in trouble until you get him a upgrade if you void curse him, but don't. I mean,
Shank is garbage to begin with.
Shank is garbage for attacks, but Shank is super money for supporting. So just make him one of the last void cursed. But having void cursed range 2 fighters for those things that are because there's some things in there, like if you attack somebody, they become void cursed as well. You can really leverage that off of your boss and Torka. Yeah.
By the way, I'm letting words like garbage loose right now because we're filming back to back off the Trash Fire tournament here.
We are, and speaking of which, it's getting late, so we're gonna wrap it up shortly here. I'm gonna throw it out for any last thoughts on any of these new releases here.
One final thought from me is that the Battle Mallet podcast also has a format where they make sure to cover their favorite cards. And I recommend checking out their coverage when it releases for these same decks and seeing what they think about the Nemesis format with these decks, because they're definitely going to focus on those, and hearing what their favorites are. They might have some overlap. They might not. Curious where that overlap is. Love to hear about that overlap. I'm definitely going to check out their episode myself, and where the similarities lie, what their justification is for those similarities.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a good take.
And we have a card by card breakdown in our blog. We each split up each deck, so you might get different takes on each deck, but we tried to pick something that we were really fired up about. I know I would have had to struggle through Far Striders.
Yeah.
Check out the blog.
Because you're a bad person.
Sue me.
and to jump off of Brian there, our leads for this content, Void Curse Thralls was yours truly. Far Striders was Phil. Sepulchral Guard Josh, hence why we were able to grab him early on for that coverage. And Headsman was Brian. Davey, our sweet editor, and the one to come in and let us know that our takes are bad.
And we're doing him a favor. We're recording 2 episodes back to back. He's got 4 weeks to work on this one.
Yeah. No, I don't. Well, that's behind that. It's getting edited out. I don't have 4 weeks on this. Because we're gonna have to drop this a week after the other one.
Oh, baby!
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Davey.
Also, if you're not a blog reader like I can barely read the cards, then you could also check out Path to Glory for their card by card coverage of every release. They don't know how they do it, but kudos to them.
You know what? I want to jump on that with a shout out real quick. I was recently on a road trip and had the opportunity to catch up on some podcast content, and their Wyrdhollow review was unique and had great energy behind it. They even dove into the boards, and I really appreciated that.
That's cool. All right. Well, thanks, fellas. We're going to wrap it up here, though. As always, if you want to reach out to us, the best place is on Discord. We have our own. You can get us there. If that doesn't work for you, you can get us on Twitter at WTHcast or on email at whatthehexcast@gmail.com. There's lots of Mortal Realms content from the greater network. You can check that out at themortalrealms.com. Coming up, we are going to try to take a different spin on that starter set and bring on a returning or new player and kind of record their experience with that. TBD exactly how that's going to be determined.
August 13th, championship tournament, Noble Knight Games, Fitchburg, Wisconsin.
Oh my
Come
gosh.
on down.
Filming 2 episodes back to back. We almost forgot to mention that. Please.
August 13th. August 13th.
13th. Championship. Madtown.
It's going to be great.
Throwdown Q3.
Chicagoland. Get your butts up here.
Yeah, once we work our way through some of this new content, we are looking to do some championship coverage, which we haven't had a chance to do in a while. Gentlemen, can I interest you in a Flavatex quiz?
Oh, please do.
Why, yes, of course.
This is a quote attributed to one of my main men from this past weekend, or a little further away. That would be Oberyn the Bold. Quote, "Did they always look like that?"
I know exactly what card this is. Brian, do you want to shot at this? Spoilers, it's from Void Curse Thralls.
Oh. Yeah, I don't
It's
know.
Forbidden Thralls.
Yes.
And to add to that, I would like to call out that he is known as Oberyn the Bold, not Oberyn the Observant.
Oberyn the Bro with knockback. Yes, you are correct. Well done. Our recommended listening for this episode is Vide Noir, and it's by Lord Huron. And for What the Hex, I've been Davey.
And I've been Skylar.
I've been Brian.
Gambit unchanged essentially from its original incarnation.
Ooh, that's not correct.
Was it not?
So it took 2 nerfs, one direct and one indirect. So the direct is it's now limited to adjacent fighters.
Was it not adjacent before?
It was not. It was just taken out of action.
Okay.
And the indirect nerf is there have been some pretty, not too substantial, but broad defensive upgrades. So fighters are going to go down less often.
Fair enough.
Sorry for the actually moment there.
Got me good, you son of a-
Yeah, no, I like seeing Davey get schooled.
Davey's like editing this out.
Just writing myself some notes for where to edit this out.
This was a mistake.
And mute Josh's entire sound line.
I mean, only Josh would have been dumb enough to take it before. I don't know. All right. As a Reaver player, where their one was like for adjacent, I assumed everything was as bad as that. But anywho,